Thanks for inviting me, everyone. It's a funny situation, an engineer getting to speak at an event basically about health. But any engineers going to be brave enough to put up their hand? Oh, not too bad. Either you're braver than most of the audience or there are more of you here. I don't know which one that's going to be. I'm one of those strange people maybe in a modern environment. All my working life that started in the very early 80s at the Hobart City Council, I've done the same thing. Trying to make traffic and transport engineering about everything but the car. And my brother always says, well, you're bloody hopeless then, aren't you? And I said, well, it's a work in progress. Sometimes people say to me, in the mid-80s, the oil crisis, said, Steve, they're going to do your job for you. You'll be out of a job after all this. People won't be able to afford petrol, the cars will disappear, you'll have nothing to do for the rest of your working life. And it didn't quite work that way, but then the peakers came along. And they said, oh, the peakers will fix it, peak oil. Not only won't be able to afford it, people will stop making it. Won't be able to drive cars, you'll win, you'll be out of a job. But alas, still the car usage goes on. The environment guys, maybe they were going to be my Trojan horse. This one, getting rid of this is my Trojan horse. Yeah. We will get better movement systems because people are starting to take notice that the ones we've got are really, really bad for us. Yeah. Who's been to either of these places here? This is a European street here on the left. It's from Germany. I haven't been there. Someone on holiday sent that just to tease me. It's a good street, yeah? Who likes to look at that one? Yeah? If you were there, you'd take a photo of that and say, that's bloody rip snorter. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to build them. Doesn't meet any of our street standards at all. The parking lane's too narrow. The driving lanes are too narrow. Nothing works. We're not allowed to build that. This one here is an Australian street. You might be able to recognise. Who recognises that one? No. I can see why you would say that, though. That's a Melbourne street. It's a pretty good shopping street. It's very good at emptying credit cards, that street. Anyone have a guess? It's Chapel Street. Yeah. Very good, very good. So this is Chapel Street. Now, poor old Chapel Street has had a lot of stuff crammed down its throat over the years. And it's pretty much the space where it's so sort of cramped it kind of doesn't quite work anymore. And it's just dropping off its peak fun time it had a few years ago. Yeah? But up until very recently, it was one of the most popular retail streets in all of Australia. But unfortunately, we're not allowed to build them anymore either. This stuff, the art of putting this together, which to be fair, some of it was just by osmosis, has completely gone. But this we can do. This is allowed. And this is not a 1970s bloody Los Angeles thing. This happened on our watch. Anyone know where this is? Downtown Brisbane. The paint's still wet on this. This we can do. This we don't like. We're not allowed to do this anymore. How do we get into that mess? When we all got access to cars, one kind of thing happened, that all the stress of trying to fit all those different land uses in a walkable place, I don't have to do it anymore. It was really tricky, so now, because we've got a car, I can put stuff further apart. And it takes the stress off having to try and put all those things together. And as too many people live in this bit or too many workplaces go on there, I can just I can make the road a bit wider. Everyone's got a car and I can make it wider and wider, and now I can stack them on top of each other. And the thing that actually caused this ruckus is I can put them under the ground. So my engineering prowess knows no bounds to get capacity. So you would think there would be no such thing as traffic congestion. If I can build that, surely I can solve traffic congestion. Who drove to work this morning? Did you experience any traffic congestion? We can't catch it, can we? No matter how fast we pedal, we can. Even though we can do this, we still can't catch it. The whole mechanism of moving the car has become such an obsession that no matter what we do, we will fill it up. I was in a regional shire the other day and they said, oh, people are complaining about not enough parking in this village. I'm going to build a big multi-storey car park. What's that going to do? People get off the bus, and because they'll get some nice convenient parking, they'll get onto the car and they'll get more traffic. So they're going to have to build one of these. More and more of this. These two streets here take exactly the same amount of traffic. One was built after the war and one was built before the war. This was built after we had cars, this was built before we had cars. This is local-ish. Who knows where this is? Yeah. This is through the middle of a regional Queensland town. It's a remnant main road. The highway goes around it now. Every attempt that local government's made to skinny that up, to make it a more walkable, usable, human-friendly place, they said, no, we can't affect the capacity of that road. Why not? Why can't I affect the capacity of that road? Anyone, have a guess. Make something up. Some people put their hand up as an engineer. Why can't I reduce the capacity of this road? There's a highway goes around the town. Why can't I? Yes, noise. Someone will go crook at me. You took something away. Even if it was a bad thing, you still can't take it away. Yeah, you local government workers, it's your impossible position, isn't it? You have to promise to improve my town, but at the same time you have to promise not to change anything. It's real. That's where you sit, isn't it? What a horrible spot. And so this stays on. Yeah, these businesses prosper. These ones die off. Full lease signs, tattoo parlours, sex shops, $2 shops. Yeah, you know the drill. You've all seen it. Time and time again. This is a road. All about this. This stuff here on the edge dies away. It's not a nice place to be. Designing a street, different to designing a road. This is a street. Who likes this one? Are they as good as the ones at the start? Who likes that one? The reason I use this perfect street phrase, and people have used it before, this developer, very experienced developer in this particular part of Australia, the reason he thought this is the best one ever, because it went through the council approval process like that. So that's how a developer might define a perfect street. Quickest one ever. After being a developer for 20 or 30 years, this is, in his mind, the best one he's ever done. That particular council, this must be what they want. It's got a footpath, and that footpath's been there quite a while, and I can pretty much guarantee you that's not going to wear out. Those kids in this street will never meet each other. Every single trip out of that little street will be made in a car. The density is so low that poor old Barry can't possibly pick them all up in a bus. The only choice for movement here is by a car. What's the most dangerous way to move around? In a car. We're inadvertently shortening these people's lives. They will use a car for everything. Some of them might have a home gym or do stuff to try and get exercise, but we're inadvertently taking a massive percentage of their opportunity to stay active away from them. That's mean. They have every right not to suspect that they're doing that. They're looking for a 4-bedroom house with 2 car parking spaces, and it just happens to be there. But you all know that the consequence of that is that they won't live as long. And yet there are local governments in this country, particularly, well, not particularly this one, including this one, that still let it happen. Why do we do that? Go on, make it up. Why is this? We haven't stopped this, have we? Still goes ahead. People are doing it pretty much as fast as they can cut up the cow paddocks or the pineapple paddocks or the cane farms or whichever town you come from. Why are we still doing that? A little bit. It's too hard to do anything else. That's exactly right. 99.5% of the land use, strategic land use plans around Australia, this is the easiest thing to get to market. We've got all these rules. To be fair, they're mostly leftover rules. To do inner urban development in a walking community is a massive penalty you put on a developer. It's very, very, very hard to get that stuff to market. This stuff is really, really easy, relatively speaking. So why would you not do this? People think they want 5-bedroom houses with a media room and 3 car parking spaces, the same way Henry Ford's customers wanted a black car. That was all he made. This is 90% of our land use product. So people buy it because they want to put a roof over their heads. They don't buy it because they want it, they buy it because that's all they've got. That street is designed for use by a car. When I put this graph up in front of local governments, they say, yep, I completely agree with this. We already do this in our shire or our city. Pedestrians are first. They're the most important people to us, and with cars like there at the bottom. Now, I agree that most of you might like pedestrians more than cars. You feel nicer about doing something for this than you do about for this ugly beast down the bottom. But do you really do it? If I teamed up with a couple of guys down here in the front and we found 4 or 5 little blocks, ratty old houses and a fallen down, maybe fringe industrial, right on the edge of the city, we're going to put 12 beaut flash 3-bedroom family townhouses there. Because we're so close to town, we won't put any car parks in. People can walk into the city easy. We'll spend some money on doing up the council's bikeway system. We'll do up the local bus stop. We'll do up the footpath all across our frontage. But we won't do a TIA because this is down the bottom of your list. No traffic impact assessment, we've got no car parks. Now, how many councils, if I went into the pre-lodgement with that story, how would I go? Yeah, that's what happened. You'd laugh at me. Because this is the most important thing. And unless I say, where are you going to park all your cars and where you're going to assure me that you won't cause any traffic congestion, I have to tick those boxes before I'm allowed to talk about anything. This is driving the way we develop our cities and our towns. And it's got consequences. Anyone recognise what this weird picture here is? That's an output from the religious oar-like instrument, a traffic model. Yeah? So the really thick lines are the terrible ones, and ones where you've got red spots, that's even worse. You've got congestion, which obviously must be avoided at all costs. This says that if people are given their head a time and distance algorithm to say, where do we want to go, it tells you how many cars will go there. And then we go and make infrastructure to make sure they can go there. And we get this here. This is a wee little town. I won't say where it was because it'll make them feel bad. This originally was just a normal little 3-way intersection, and the land use here is quite important. This is a caravan park, a few shops. This is a resort development, and it's actually got a McDonald's in it. Kids used to run from this caravan park across to these shops all the time. They'd use this McDonald's, but this did start to get congestion. It originally used to be able to cross here and cross there. This was only 2 lanes. And so this used to call up a red light for this through route all the time, and this used to queue up, and they didn't like getting a red light. So they gave it to an all-knowing traffic engineer, said, can you fix this congestion? I said, bloody oath I can, give it here. And so we fixed it. Give this big left here, so the left turners at least don't call up the red light. Left turners here don't have to wait for the red light. I took this pedestrian crossing out here so these right turners can go straight away. It works beautifully. If you're in a car, it works fantastic. Except these poor shops now turn over about every 3 or 4 months. These people from the caravan park can't get here anymore. They don't let kids run to the ice cream shop anymore. McDonald's, due to its massive pulling power, still gets people there, but how do they get from this caravan park to this McDonald's now? It's only about 250 yards. How do they do it now? Yep, they drive. They've got to go down way here, way around the block and back to get to a big car park that's in the back of this McDonald's, which the council made them put there, so I guess they asked for it. This is a street design. It's decayed into road design. They're two different things. Getting a road designer to design your street is like getting a vet to do heart surgery on you. A couple of the things might look a little bit the same, but they're completely different art forms. It's no good using road standards to do a street. They're not relevant to each other. Streets are all about what happens on the edge. The lateral movement is the most important thing. Crossing like Brown's cows. Can I get from this land use to that land use? If I'm living here, has that shop got a chance to get my wallet? If I'm walking on this side and that's a great shop there, can I get across there? Longitudinal movement in a street network is almost irrelevant. I'm heading to New Zealand tomorrow to do a workshop on a main street that they're trying to fix up. And when we put in our bid, the guy said, look, Steve, I like the way you went about it, but I think you haven't done any traffic surveys. I think you've left that out of the bid. I said, no, I haven't. I just don't care how many cars there are. What I care about is getting people from shop front to shop front so those shops can make some money. Once I've got that environment right, and the distance between shop window to shop window and shop door to shop door, and the people can cross like Brown's cows, once I've got that right, then I'll go back to the traffic engineer and says, mate, you've got room for 4,000 cars, send the rest somewhere else. The opposite way to what we normally do it. So your street can function. It's not a road. There is no economic value in the longitudinal movement in a street. It's the lateral movement that makes you money. A road, the Bruce Highway, that makes money from getting people from Brisbane to Cairns. Its longitudinal movement is important to the economy. Streets, the lateral movement is how they make money for the community. Longitudinal movement is irrelevant. This is the interesting bit. As a traffic engineer, it gets drilled into your brain to stop crashes at all costs. This particular town, you can see there's a 40 zone there. This is near a school. And the kids were running across the street. They didn't have an incident, but they were worried they were going to have an incident. So how do they deal with that kids running across the street? Put a big fence up in the middle. Didn't slow the cars down so that people could run across the street. They put a big barrier to stop the kids going across the street. How do the kids from South Maroochy get to Maroochydore High School now that they can't cross the street? They drive. This intersection here was one that we tried to design to a new subdivision in a particular town, doesn't matter which one. And we originally tried to pull off the one chain main street design, which is Crown Street, we saw the picture of it before, Chapel Street, 22 metres, the one chain street width. You've all got them in your shire. It's a really good one. But then the council had to get a traffic model done. And every time they ran it, they said, oh, more and more people want to drive down here. As I put more land use on either end, the demand for traffic down this route that's not built yet, it's getting more and more and more, and it ended up being 80,000 vehicles. I said, but if I build it 20 metres wide, there won't be 80,000 vehicles down there. The model said there's going to be. And so now we've ended up, they kept going and kept going. So this particular intersection here is 10 lanes wide. 2 3s plus 2 turning lanes, yeah? This is an urban environment. What happened then was the poor developer had to change his whole land use plan. This was going to be shops and retail right up to the street edge. What is it now, do you think? Car yards? A big, massive blank wall to a bulk hardware thing. That's the only land use that can survive in that environment. True enough, people do drive down there now because there's plenty of room and they're completely uninhibited and this longitudinal movement works perfectly. But what happened to the land use on that street? It's just got more and more degraded. This is not a very nice welcome to this town anymore. It just looks like not a very nice place. So this is a classic way to deal with safety on roads. If we don't like all that stuff mixing together, what do? We just separate them out. Yeah? And in a place where you are deriving economic benefit from longitudinal movement, from a highway or a freeway, or a serious arterial road that connects two really important places, maybe that's not a bad idea. Maybe we don't want horses on the motorway. Yeah? Well, you can see that in and of itself might be a bad idea. It's going to detract from the economic value of that infrastructure to the community. So separate it out. Get the bikeway, if you're going to have one, right away off those 100-kilometre-hour cars. It sort of makes sense. But now, because our road designers make our streets, we do the same thing. I know a good way to get cars off this particular part of the network, bikes, is to put one of these in. Then they won't interact anymore. People say to me, Steve, there's no bike accidents here for like ever. What do you reckon the reason for that is? There's been no bikes there ever, yeah? I'll get rid of those pesky pedestrians, no footpath. If you want to get out of this place, you've got to drive, yeah? Same here. No people place here at all. Car parked on where you possibly could walk. This beautiful walking environment we've got down here. So the same thing, we've applied the same thing to streets as we have to highways and freeways. Cars get the go, get everything else out of the way because we're really important. We're back to the same situation we talked about with old mate's perfect street. There's only one way to get out of here. If my car broke down there, I could possibly starve to death. Yeah? Well, actually, the pizza man could come. But I couldn't get fresh food. My kids couldn't get to school. I can't get to work. Once again, at 5 dwellings per hectare, Barry can't get them with a bus. You are stranded in here. That doesn't only affect your physical health. What else does it do? Makes you lonely and sad. That's mean too, isn't it? This is not a very nice thing to do to people. Yeah? And yet, it's pretty much the only rational method of delivering housing in a lot of parts of Australia. We might get an expert opinion on that in a little bit. This wee town up here, they had a little main street that was really struggling. They built all massive low-density housing around it, which basically put Main Street shopping out of business, but put fringe, flat-floor mall shopping right in business. So this struggled, so they did what lots of people do. Well, not quite the radical step. They didn't put them all in, they put a shared zone in. But it looks like that. How good do you reckon it goes? About as good as it looks. Yeah? It's so wide, it's so expansive, there's not enough people to take control. 10 kilometres speed limit along here because it's a shared zone. The 85th's 48. Yeah, so 15% of the people go faster than 48 kilometres an hour along here. Because there's no reason not to. It's a big, it does have a nice pretty pavement colour and pattern and all that stuff, which didn't seem to do anything to attract people to the business and to make the street function like a shared space. But all those things there are quite right with it. The truck turning paths are perfectly. Clear zones are fantastic. They've got their building setback. It meets the Australian standard for minimum pavement width. So at least they're allowed to build it. All the rules perfectly look like this. What about this one? This is a shared zone too. You can actually drive down here if you're brave enough. Does anyone know where that is? It's a Melbourne one. Hardware lane. Hardware lane, yeah. And The only guy who does drive down is the delivery guy, and I've actually seen him just shift the tables a little bit, and he gets down there and he gets it done. That's a shared space. Who'd let me build one of those in their shire? Or who'd be brave enough to take my idea into the chamber in your shire? I had one guy in Hobart said, I'd have a crack. Yeah, he was. He actually got a promotion. Who said that? Yeah. But he's a slightly disturbed gentleman and he kind of didn't care either way. These three things, whereabouts in your road design standard that we apply to our street making, does it say how important shade is? Yeah? How important is gathering space or play space or walkability? Whereabouts in the Ostroad manual, how weird that I use something called Ostroads to design a street, does it tell me about that stuff? As an injury, if I need to, I've got to ask Steve about that stuff. No one at school taught me a single thing about that. And yet if that street wants to survive, it wants to contribute economically to that community, all that stuff's got to be perfect. And yet me, the street maker, I haven't got the faintest idea about it. No one ever taught me that stuff. People talk about how important the space between the buildings is as an urban setting, but most of the space between the buildings is what we call road reserve. And who gets to manage the road reserve? Me, the traffic engineer. And yet this stuff here, those brave engineers that put their hand up before, how much time in your university did you spend learning about this? Plenty about this, yeah? Nothing about this. This is life and death important. This is nearly irrelevant. Important for a road, not important for a street. How often do you get this rubbish? Sorry, we can't make this an economically sustainable place in case the garbage truck wants to do a U-turn flat out. Just in case. We haven't had that happen yet, but he might want to do it one day, and so just in case he does, we'll make it wide enough. This is a wee tiny little street that was getting serviced by this big GMC 20,000 litre V8 diesel truck. And they just battled on. People just squeezed down in between him and the truck. Now the shared zone there, that's not from Australia. The little flag gives it away. Who's been there? It's the old city in Quebec. Yeah, so it was built before we had cars, so they've just got to battle on. And they do. It's economically quite successful. Here's their bus. I should have got me standing next to it because I'm about that high. It takes about 12 people. Because that's as big as one as it can fit. Yeah? What they didn't do was knock down all those historic buildings and do big 3.5 metre lanes so that a normal big bendy bus could fit through. But a greenfield situation, that's what we do, don't we? Just in case we need a bit of room, we'll take a bit more, and just in case we need a bit more room, we'll take a bit more. I don't really need a 3.5 metre lane, but because I've got room, I'll take one. All of a sudden, all your stuff becomes about longitudinal movement, and the lateral movement that happens here is gone. It's wasted away. This is a bit more modern, and it's Australian. So anyone seen one of those? Do you know what it is? It's a wee garbage truck. It's about twice as big as this table. Yeah? And we're just about to set them free down on Phillip Island. They're battery operated and they're completely silent. They have big events down there when the car race comes and the bike race comes and the summer festival comes there. They've got people walking all up and down the streets. The town swells to 10 times its size, and they're little garbage bins. They couldn't keep up with all the people walking around, filling up the stuff, eating, drinking. But they couldn't get a big garbage truck down to empty them all because there's people everywhere. So they've got this tiny little battery operated thing that whizzes around and picks them all up. It's going 24/7 just about during festival time. Someone thought a way out of that stupid mess that everything's got to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Their choice was to have bigger and bigger bins. So there was nearly no room for people to walk. They have big skip bins on the sidewalk, yeah? big is not always better. Someone thought of a way out of this, and this, and this. We can do that too. One of the ironies about road safety is that it's probably not very good for our health. Driving a car, unless you're a crocodile wrestler or a snake charmer or some damn thing, is probably the most dangerous thing you'll ever do. It's a bit like smoking cigarettes. If you do it often enough, it'll probably get you. It'll either get you because you have a horrible crash. It's more likely to get you like this. If you spend too much time driving, you're not spending enough time walking. And I don't have to tell this audience what happens if you don't spend enough time walking. Yeah? Car crashes are only the tip of the iceberg for the downside to driving a car. How the car really gets us is heart disease, diabetes, cancer. That's the real damage the car does. By spending so much money. And it's not the road designers, it's the road safety guys who've done such a wonderful job of reducing crash rates and death rates by having seatbelts. We don't drive pissed anymore. Yeah? Central Queensland they probably still do, but mostly we don't drive pissed anymore. So our crash rates come down. We're convincing people that a really dangerous thing to do is actually safe. So don't bother walking. Don't bother riding your bike. Don't catch the bus. I'm making car driving safer. You should do that instead. Our crash rate is coming down, but our driving rate's still going up. Lots and lots and lots of people still die. Who walked here this morning? Did you have a car crash? No. Well, the best ways to avoid a car crash is not by wearing a seatbelt or driving safer, although they're all good ideas. The best idea is just not to get in one. And that, as a safety measure, as a health measure, has been completely overlooked. It's all about, once you get in a car, how do I make you safe then? What about just not getting in the damn thing? That's where all the damage gets done. And this whole thing, oh, we're making driving safe, we're making driving safer, come and join the team. Buy a car. Get on board. It's not dangerous like it used to be. It is. It's bad for you. The consequence of applying this road safety stuff to streets, getting people out of the way so the car doesn't crash into anyone, there's going to be less of us because of that. What about we made a street that might be a bit tricky to drive down, so eventually you'll get sick of doing it, but it was a great place to walk. Meet your friends, play cricket, let your kids walk to the park because there's so many other people in your street. We're not allowed to make them anymore because the rules say we have to do this. We have to make car travel safe. There can't be any possible way that he could hit anything. Get everything out of the way. Make it wide, which is all great if you are in that car and you get to where you're going as fast as you possibly can. But what about everything else that should be happening in the street? The art of making the street for that purpose has almost been lost. Steve might say he might still be the last bastion of making a street for people, but I mean, there are a few hanging on for grim death, but every single rule in most of our strategic plans is to make sure that you, as a developer, as a proponent, as an assessor, as a professional, look after the car first. Make sure there's enough car parking spaces. Make sure you're not causing any congestion, because the machine is more important than the person. Once again, a little bit mean. What do you want your street designers to do? If you're going to be in charge of a great place, what do you want them to do? Make them safe for cars, buses, trams, bikes, people. How healthy is it if those cars don't ever run into each other and don't have to slow down? These are key questions when you're approving subdivisions? What do you want the designers to do? What do you want the proponents to do? What do you want the assessors to check? Do they think about what they're checking, or do they go through the checklist and tick the box? If you do that, you could get a perfect street, like old mate at the very start. Yeah? A perfect street, went through every council hurdle without a hitch. It must have been perfect. Who thought that was perfect? Who would take the photo of that and send it to their friends in Europe and say, look at our perfect street? It's almost shameful, isn't it? And yet that's what the machine produces. The machine that we all made, it took us 50 or 60 years to make it, and now that's how it works. These spaces down the bottom are quite rare, aren't they? I don't want you to race off and write these down, but I want you to write some for yourself. These are my touchstones for making good streets. What it does is gives me the confidence when I go into the chamber that I'm telling a good story. So when your councillors go, Crook says, Steve, I'm going to get complaints about congestion, or this is not going to work, there's not enough parking. I go through this checklist in my head. I'm right, I'm making a good place. Those little things you think are problems, they're not. This is what you have to do. These might be a bit childlike and a bit simplistic, which is why I say probably make up your own. What makes a good place? What things are you constantly going to checking in your brain? This is how I'm going to make a good place. Not this is how I'm going to get a fast approval, or this is how I'm going to stop the phone ringing back at the office, or this is how I'm going to get Councillor Smith off my back. This is what I need to do to make a good place. I'm not underestimating how difficult it is to make a good place. I quite often ask people what their favourite street is, and I've probably asked, I don't know, thousands and thousands of people by now in environments like this. And everyone says places like Chapel Street, Hardware Lane, Crown Street. No one, 2 people out of all the thousands have said a post-war street. No one likes the stuff we build. Which leads me to the question that said, well, why do we build it then? No one likes it. Why do we do it? No one takes photos of new streets and sends them to someone and say, look what happened in my town. Because it's horrible. No one likes it. It's unremarkable, there's no humans, it's just built to get someone from a house to the car. That low density, dead worm, street stuff, it's not really a community, a living place. It doesn't meet any of these touchstones. It's just a place you put people overnight when you're not using them. In the morning you get them all out again and send them off in their car and they go to their place. We've got to get better at this. Otherwise our lives are going to keep getting shorter. Thank you for inviting me today and thanks for listening to me.